We're good to go. Okay, so in the last class, we discussed about models and did a lot of stuff about it, basically, Shasha. And in this class, I primarily want to dive into views, trying to because from this week we're supposed to start working on architecture, that's REST APIs, building APIs, and all of that. But you need to understand how views work for that to happen. So that's what we're going to do in this class. But first, I want to commend Zainab. The assignment was, I really liked the way you did that. I know I didn't mention anything about choice field, and how to work around that. But the extra research that was really really nice. So well done, and I'm hoping you keep it up. Okay,
Thank you.
yeah. So back to this, and I've written a lot of stuff already. So let me just clear it out. Let me go to my URLs here and clear them out as well. Because, okay, yeah, that's fine. So, the first thing I forgot to mention something in the last class. Zainab made that mistake. So when we are working on what's the name? When you're working with environment variables, sorry, virtual environments and all of that, right? There's something called a requirements file. Basically, what a requirements file is it contains the list of all the dependencies that your project depends is using. So, for instance, your project is using Django, maybe it's using pandas, or you start using different libraries, different packages, maybe Django, Olots, or Jasmine, and all of that. And then you're pushing to Git, you're pushing to GitHub, right? You need by default your virtual environment does not get pushed to GitHub, right? So in order
Oh,
for yeah, it doesn't get pushed. That's if you had a git ignore file anyway. It doesn't get pushed to GitHub. So if you if you're working with someone else, for instance, you and I are working on a project, right? And you want me to access one or two things on the same project, right? It's not feasible for me to start asking you, okay, what are the dependencies? For instance, you might have used eight dependencies, and those ones themselves might have installed more dependencies and all of that. So what is best is to put everything inside a requirements file. And how do you do that? You just type pip freeze, right? Then this greater than sign, and you see requirements.
I can't see your screen.
Oh crap! Here we are again. I'm so sorry about that. Let me share my screen again. Let me share my screen again. I'm recording with something else, so I forgot totally that. So here we go. So you can see the screen right now.
Yes.
Okay, great. So just type pip freeze and this greater than sign. I'll say requirements.txt. Enter. So basically you can see it's created a file known as requirements.txt. And by the time this command is done, you should be able to see all your dependencies on this inside this file. So I open it now and you can see the only thing we installed was Django and Django REST framework. But those ones themselves installed some other dependencies and you can see them here. So anytime I clone this project from GitHub, I only need to say pip install -r then requirements.txt. So everything inside this place here is going to install directly to my virtual environment or my local computer. So yeah, back to the class now. Today I mentioned that we're going to discuss views. So what is a view? Basically, let me try to use a simple analogy to explain what a view is. So you're building a web application, right? We've created models and we've done a lot of things about models and all of that. So how do we make these things appear on the web page, right? How do we let our users see it? Or in the case of creating an API, how do we allow the front end developers access the data or the resources that we have in our models? And that's where the concept of views come in basically. So a view handles the business logic, it handles all the logic, right, relating to your application. So that's where you have your major logic. Maybe you want to perform some operations. Last class we did some things on our views. We did something like push dot objects dot all, and then we printed it out and we saw all of that. So you probably want to manipulate one or two things on our models, or it might not even be related to the models, right? All of those things are done within the views. Now there are two types of views basically in Django. There's class-based views and then we have function-based views. So for the next few classes, we'll be focusing on function-based views because they are like it's important for you to understand how function-based views is more like is the closest to the root, so you'll be able to understand what is going on behind the scenes. So yeah, so now if you create an app by default, it creates a file known as views.py. Are you guys there?
Yes.
Hello. Okay, great. So if you create your app, I hope you guys have on your PC share. It creates a file known as views.py for you, and this is where you write all the logic about your views. So first of all, to create a view, first I mentioned that starting with function-based views. So to create a view, you define a function basically, then you give it a name. So what name do you want to give it? Let's say hello world. Now a view basically takes in a request. So this is standard. You have to pass in a request, and then inside your function you can write whatever it is that you want. So first of all, let's start with saying 2 plus 2. Let's create a variable is equals to 2 plus 2, right? And then we want to return an HTTP response. I'm going to explain what this is in a few minutes. Okay, great. So by default, you see that HTTP response got imported for me. I'm using an extension, that's why. I can share it with you if you want. So now,
Share,
yeah,
please
I'll share it with you
have
on
to
the
please do
Slack.
it.
I'll share it with you on the Slack. So now, what what
Okay.
what does this mean for us basically? Now, um, in the beginning, in the very first class, the orientation that we had, I mentioned something about someone joining the class. No, okay. So I mentioned something about APIs, REST API being a web service basically, and the reason why it's a web service is because it's running through the web, through HTTP and all of that. So whenever you go to a web page, for instance, now maybe you type unilag.com or whatever, and then what you are doing right there is basically you're making an HTTP request to the server. That is, the server is the place where the website is hosted, right? The cloud platform that they're using to host the website. And then when you start seeing the content on the website, the pictures and all of those things, what you are seeing is the response, right? So the HTTP, that's what the server is returning to you. That's what the backend or whatever cloud service they have, that's what it is returning to you. So that's basically the idea of this HTTP response. So what we want right now is that whenever a user goes to our website and it does something that trigger this function, we want it to return this variable to it as an HTTP response. Great. So how do we go about it? We have views. The next thing is URLs. If you open your core, that's your project folder, you see a file known as urls.py. When you open it, you see something like this. This is the only path that is here. And that's why we were able to access the admin panel the other time by going to /admin, right? So now if you want users to excuse me, if you want users to access, if you want to create more URLs for users to access, right, we just have to come here and add on to it. There's a better way to do it, but let's start from the beginning. So just create a path, and in this place you can add whatever it is that you want. The okay, first of all, let me do something. Let's if I run my server now, let's give it a minute. Wait. This is what we see in this place right now. right? So now we want to replace this with our own page that returns this HTTP response that we have here. So what we are going to do is add a path like this, and then because we want it to be the very first page, you don't need to add anything. You know, in this place here, they added admin slash, but you want yours to be the very first page, so you don't need to add anything. If you want a separate path, like maybe post, you can add this, and then when the user goes to slash post, it will work, right? So let's leave this, and then you come here, and the next thing you need to add is the name of the view. So what is the name of the view? The name of the view is this hello world over here. So copy it, go to my URLs, and then paste it. Then finally we give it a name. So a name is just like a unique identifier for this specific path. So let me call it hello world.
Are we supposed to put the hello word in a string? The one in the middle.
No. I was coming to that. I wanted to ask you guys where the error might be. Okay, so the thing is, the one in the middle is our function, right? So this name
Yes.
can be anything. Can be anything really. This one on this end here, right? But the one in the middle is our function. So it has a representation in our project as a whole. So in order for us to use it, right, we'll come here and import it. So you import the name of the view. Import, sorry. So once you import it from blog, let's look at the hierarchy. So this function is inside the blog app. So say blog app dot, when we open it from the blog, we know that it is inside the views. Where's the views? Inside the views. So we say blog dot views. Then that will import, because blog dot view, we're already in the file now. Once you say blog dot views, it means we're already in the file. So we now import whatever it is that we want to import here. And what we want to import is hello world. So we'll say import hello world. And you see that there's no error anymore. But there is something wrong, because it's coming from our own project. We have to include it, because it is our custom stuff. We have to include it, and to do that we just import the include function from this place here. It's pretty simple. So now that we have this, let me try to run our server again. Run it. What's going on?
I think it's because that hello world, it should be hello world.url or something.
No, it's not hello world.
Just
It's just hello world. Okay, I'm coming. Okay. This should
yeah,
work now.
line 15. They said include that blogs.url. That
Okay,
line 15.
it works now. What happened was the include. That was for something else. Sorry. So now that it works, when we go to our first page and then we reload, we see 4, because that's the value of our variable here. So 4 is equal to 4. So for instance, we can return something else in the HTTP response as well, right? We can come here. Sorry, please, whose mic is on? Thank you. Joseph, you joined twice. Probably you have 2 devices, but please, if you can leave one, so the audio will be okay. So yeah, now we can return something else apart from this variable. We can say hello. Okay, this is hello. Let it reload. Wait, and then when we come to our website, you can see that it has hello. So from HTTP response as well, apart from just returning random stuff like this, you can actually I don't know if you guys know HTML, but you can actually return HTML elements through your HTTP response. So something like an H1, doing like this and say hello, then return under H1 again. Sorry, if you close the H1 tag rather, and then when it reloads, you should see that it has taken the style and shape of um, an H1 element in HTML basically. So, and actually you can keep going, to be quite honest. You can keep going, you can write your full websites inside your HTTP response here right now. Who's trying to join? Okay. Welcome Caleb. Yeah, so back to what I was explaining. I said apart from the H1 and stuff, you can keep writing your HTML and then keep returning whatever it is that you have, and it will keep going and going and going and all of that. So this is one way to return responses. Oh, see, who's that? This is one way to return responses. Where are you here?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great, awesome. So this is one way to return responses. Then we also have the JSON response as well. Okay, let's say JSON. Then it takes in a request again, like I mentioned. You put your colon and then you come in here and you do what you want to do. So what was it that, okay, I said JSON response. Before JSON response, let me quickly do something. This is the same project we used in the last class, and we created a model called post, right? So let's try to return stuff from the post as our HTTP response. So we say posts is equals to post dot objects dot all, like this. Oh, we don't have post. So before we can use this, you have to import it, like I mentioned. So from where are we importing it from? Anybody?
From the models.
Yeah, great. So dot models, and the reason I'm using just dot is because we are in the same folder, right? So import post, great. So you can use this now. Now that we have imported post, you can now this basically just retrieves all the posts for us. So if we want to like return only the title or only the content of the post, how do we go about it? So okay, so we can use a loop to go through it. This is just normal Python at this point now. The loop I'm talking about is just normal Python, so don't think too much about it. I'm just trying to show you that you can do different things with your views. So now let's just say, let me do something really good. So say for post, okay, no, we'll create an empty list and say content for posts in posts, right? Then content dot append post dot content. Great. So now let me explain what I am doing. First of all, I explained this in the last class. I explained what all of this mean in the last class. So basically what we are doing here is we are retrieving all the posts that we have in our database currently, and then we only want the content, because if we retrieve all the posts that we have in our database, it's going to return a query set. So we want to get a list of the contents. By contents, what I mean is this over here, because we have title, we have contents, we have date created. Good. So now we want to retrieve just the content. That's the field called content. So to do that, I created an empty list first of all, like this, and then I wrote a for loop. What I'm saying is that for post in post, so just saying for I in post, this post here is what I'm representing here, right? Now I'm not appending something to the to this list, basically content. This content over here is this same content over here. Content.append is a Python function. I feel like you guys should know this already, but I'm just going to try and explain.
Yeah.
So content.append, and what am I appending to it? I'm appending post. That's this representation here dot content. So this content that is coming from this place is the content we have in our model. Basically, that's just it. So what am I going to do now? I'm going to return an HTTP response, and it is going to be content, basically, right? So how do we make this thing show on the web page? Does anybody have an idea based on how we did the previous one?
Uh, Pass the JSON um, function to the URL.
Okay, awesome. So we come here and then we import it like this because it is from the same file. We come here and
Sorry, if we
then
have like a lot of functions, are we going to import them?
yeah, sure. I'm going to explain that. Basically,
Okay.
the proper standard is that each of your app has its own URLs files. So each app has its own dedicated URLs. You get. So we
Okay.
are going to come to that. So we come here again and then path. So at this point now we cannot use this same empty path for it because we have used it already. So just say um content slash, then I come here, comma, and I say JSON. Then finally I'm going to give it a name, JSON. Okay, so now that we've passed it and I refresh the page, I'm still seeing this. What do you guys think we should do next?
I don't know, like put the content in the route or something.
Yeah, I'll go to slash content, and you can see that we have all the contents from our web page. So this does not really beautify it or show it. Anyways, it's an HTTP response, so this is how it's going to be anyways. But if you use Postman, I mentioned the Postman earlier from the beginning, so I believe everybody has installed it. If not, just install Postman and you should be able to get this interface. So what I did just now is paste this URL. I pasted my URL over here and then put it here. So I'm going to send, and now you can see it in a beta version. If I click raw, you can see the different contents available. So this is basically a little insight as to how you'll be returning APIs a lot of the times, right? So although with APIs you probably want to use JSON response, probably want to return it as JSON, but this is basically how it is. So now if I'm a front-end developer, I can just pick it and then start implementing it, start using it in my front-end stuff like that. So this is basically it. So for instance, now if you want to return the titles, previous, so previous mic is that okay, great. So if I just want to return the title, I just append the title, I'll wait for it to reload. Awesome. It has reloaded, then I use postman again. Now when I send, I'm only seeing the titles, because you can see that everything is on one line. That's because it is a list. I'm basically returning a list as an HTTP response. So now back to JSON response. We can return this same thing as JSON response, but we'll get an error. I want us to get the error actually. Okay, so I need to import JSON response as well. So you don't need to cram the places where you need to import these things basically, right? I mean, as you keep coding, you probably get used to it, right? But this is something you can just Google anywhere online, or you can install an extension for basically. So yeah, back to this now. If we do this and we check on our web browser, we refresh, we are getting an error, and the error basically says in order to allow non-dictionary objects to be serialized, set the safe parameter to false. Wait, am I too fast? Let me before I keep going. Are you guys getting the flow?
Sorry, can you go back like a little? I
To
wasn't
where?
following. Um, when you kept like the slash content,
Okay. In this place.
yes, before you got this error,
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to
or did you
reload.
get the?
No, no,
Okay.
no. Before I got the error, my server is reloading. Okay, great. So, what did you not understand?
I wasn't following, so I'm like, I was asking if you could go back to this place. I understand this part just from this place. I didn't get what you were saying.
Okay, great. So basically, the
Yes.
only thing I did was I changed from content. I changed it to title, and then I came to the I came to postman, and then I sent in a request as well, and we primarily got the same thing. So the next thing I did was to try to return this as a JSON response instead of an HTTP response. So
Okay.
yeah, so and I was saying something about not having to cram where to import these modules, right? Because as you keep coding, you will get um you will get a hang of it basically. But for now, it's something you can easily find on Google, or you can store in your notes or something. You get.
Yes.
Yeah,
All
great.
right. Thank you.
So now, does anybody understand what JSON is basically? How JSON looks like?
Like a dictionary.
Yeah, awesome. Like a dictionary. So let's keep it at that basically. So a Python dictionary, well, it just basically looks like a Python dictionary, as you've said. So now we are trying to return a JSON response, and then that was where I got this error. This one, yeah. So what is the problem? It's saying in order to allow non-dict objects to be serialized, set the safe parameter to false. So what's going on is that I'm trying to return this content here, and content is a list. So if I return a JSON response, you have to return a dictionary basically. So content is a list, and that will definitely not work. But it's telling us that if we want to bypass that, that's, should I call it a security
You
measure now? That measure puts to ensure that whatever I put in list is a dictionary
dictionary.
rather. I should set the safe parameter to false. So in order to do that, I'll just come here and say comma safe is equals to false, and then wait for this guy to reload. Now when you reload, you can see it is returning everything properly. You can see it's saying JSON, whatever, whatever. Although this is not truly JSON anyway. If you come to Postman as well and you click on pretty, you can see it is returning everything properly. Prior to this, it should have returned it as, it should have given us an error, just like we saw. So now how do we actually return JSON? Well, should I go to that yet? No, okay. So now there is something that I wanted to do with this here, basically. Um, I actually wanted to leave it for you guys to figure out. It's basic Python stuff, because this is primarily too long for what we achieved. These 3 lines of code is too long for what we achieved. So it is actually very possible for us to reduce it to 1 line of code. That is list comprehension. So we can just say post dot title for posts in posts, right? And we comment these guys out. Great. So if we refresh, everything is still working the way it should work, right? So I initially just wrote the whole place so you guys can understand the flow of it, but this is list comprehension. So now back to actually returning JSON. How can we return JSON? There's a way So the idea is that we want to return a dictionary, right? What do you guys think we can do in this scenario? Do you understand?
Um,
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe like make the title of the content of the post like the key, and then the content the value. I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So basically, I'll create a dictionary, and what I'll do is I'll say post, or I'll say contents, right? Then I'll say post dot contents for posting post. Do you understand this?
Um, yes, yes.
Yes. Joseph, do you understand this? This
Yeah, I'm trying.
this is pure Python. It's not Django basically. This is just Python. So what I just did is that
Police comprehension, Abi.
yeah, list comprehension. So inside
Okay,
of it,
okay.
I created a dictionary there. So what I'm just doing is that the key is content, and then the value is the content that we're actually taking from our models. So I now use the list comprehension to make it keep going for all the posts we have in our models. So now if we go to the to postban and we send the request, right, you can see basically that we have content. Everything is now returning as JSON. So if you want to return um the title as well, say something like title, then do post dot title, right? So we can even make it better. We can say um context is equals to this, and we'll say resource, sorry, and then when you come here, where's this thing, you can say context. It is basically the same thing. So let's say reload, and you guys will see the difference. So when I send this, you can see now, I called the stuff resource in this place. So that's basically what I'm seeing here, resource in this place. The reason I'm using postman is because your browser basically is not pretty enough, and you guys might not be able to differentiate. Oh wow, it is. Oh okay, this is Firefox I'm using, not the nonsense Chrome. Okay, great. So it basically divides everything and even numbers them. And it's the same thing over here. We are seeing contents, we are seeing title, we are seeing contents, we are seeing title. So if I'm a front end developer and then I have this, right, I can just say resource dot title, and then I have the title in my front end. I just place it in my front end with JavaScript or whatever it is that I'm using. So do you guys understand that part?
So you can go back to the code.
Okay, so what didn't you understand in the code here? Let me try to explain.
I'm trying to. Okay. So this resource is like the key, and then the content is the value.
Yes, basically. So
Oh,
I just gave it a name, resource, and then the value is everything that will be returned in
a
this place.
list of dictionaries. Okay, I get it now.
Yeah, that's it basically. So now that we're returning JSON, we don't need to now that we're returning a proper dictionary, rather, we don't need to set the safe parameter anymore. So if we check it, let's say reload. So if we check it over here, you can see that it still returns without an error. The other time we had to set the safe parameter so there will be no errors. Okay, great. So let me just take that out. We've done that now. What else? HTTP response, views, post and titles. Okay, awesome. So now back to the URLs. You're asking a question. So normally the URLs we have in this place, basically it is for the project itself. That is your core file, right? So the project itself. So one of um the advised way to create your URLs basically is to come into your app and create a file for it. Say urls.py, right? Now inside this place, that's where you undo your own URLs. And how do you do that? You go to your core app. Let's just copy this first. You wouldn't need everything, but let's just copy it first. Great. So now in this place, instead of writing all of this nonsense here, and instead of importing this guy over here, what we're going to do is add a path. You can do like this, and then we'll include. So what we're including basically is that we're trying to tell Django that whenever the user hits an empty path, whenever user goes to the empty path of our project, right, direct the users to this new URL file that I'm going to give to you now. So what we're just going to do is that the name of our registered app. You must have registered this app in your settings file. We'll say blog dot, then the name of the file, URLs. This should be in this, and we are done. Yeah. So now what we need to do is come into our blog.urls and actually do some things. So first of all, we don't need this. Is there any question? Any question so far?
No question from my end.
Great.
I don't have any question.
Joseph, what about
No
you?
question.
Okay, great. So now, like I mentioned, you include the URLs. That's the one for the register. So what I'm just doing is that when you get to an empty path, go to blog.urls. Where is blog.urls? This is it, right? And in blog.urls, what do we have in blog.urls? That's where we start creating our own URLs normally, like this. So instead of saying blog.views, this is still correct, but you can just say .views because we're already in the same folder. You import your stuff and then the URL pattern is like this. So for instance now, if I put this and say home slash, and we come to the empty path. mm. Oh, sorry. Okay, so we refresh now. We are getting a page not found 404 error, despite the fact that in our URLs here we have the empty path. So what this is telling us is that we have the empty path here, right? But in order for anything to show on the empty path in this place as well, we have to come here and leave this guy empty. So if you go to
What?
okay, now let's go back. This file here is the one from your project default file. This one came with Django when you created your project, right?
Yes.
And then we left an empty path here, and then we said we should look for the blog.urls and use that one. But despite the fact that we have an empty path, we still have a 404. That means we cannot find the URLs at all. We cannot find that path at all. So what is going on is that despite the fact that we have this here, we've directed Django to look for this. So what we need to do is come over here and then make sure that the first one, or whichever one we prefer, is empty as well. So it doesn't have to be the first one. It's just like you are creating a URLs for your own page. It can be the fifth URL pattern that you create. It's really up to you. So whatever you want to do on the home page must be empty in this place as well. If you see some, if you go to slash home like this, you can see that we have our hello world here. And if we go to contents now, you can see that we have our JSON response here as well. So basically, it's just telling us that if we want it to be empty, we leave it empty. Do you guys get that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's reload. Awesome. Awesome. So now that we left it empty, if we refresh, we should get the hello back. So what if we come to the URLs and then I say home slash. What do you guys think is going to happen if we go to let's reload. If we go to the empty part, we're going to get a 404 again. So what do you guys think we can do now?
Probably change it, like put like a home slash in this
Exactly.
thing.
So that's simply telling you that this is like the parent, and then whatever we have on
The
top of
empty.
this complements it. You get. So if we have home slash, then we have to put home slash. Yeah, awesome. So we have it back. Awesome. So if you want to access the content, it's going to be home slash contents, because the full URL is starting from here, home slash then contents. So that is the full URL. You get.
Yes.
So that's how URLs work.
Otherwise, the content are they not supposed to show?
The content. This is the content now.
Oh, then putting my phone off.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, do you guys want to take a minute to try and digest or probably work on it as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
But
so
how is that home slash content displaying hello world
no, it is not
instead
yet.
of the JSON file?
No, this is the JSON file now. This is home slash contents JSON file.
Oh, oh, okay,
Like,
okay,
so if you
okay.
go to just home, that's where you get the hello. You understand now?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank.
Okay, so just as a recap, while you guys are doing your stuff, we primarily spoke about JSON response, returning a JSON response, and an HTTP response as well. Great. So I'll give you guys about 5 minutes or thereabouts so you can do your stuff, and then I will um continue. So let me pause the recording. Continue the recording. Awesome. Okay. So now back to it. While you guys were working on your stuff, I mentioned that you guys can return HTML. So I basically just cooked one small HTML form just to show you guys that you can actually return an HTML. So I'm going to paste it here, and let's see what the error is. So if you don't know, if you've never created an HTML form before, you've never created HTML before, you don't exactly have to worry about this, right? It's just an example basically. Okay, great. So we have this now, and I'm doing this on the home page. I just basically changed the content that we had on the home page to an HTML form that is basically saying submit and stuff. Okay, the indentation is matching now. Thank you. Awesome. So if we come back to here and I refresh, I should just get a tiny HTML form. So that's just to show you guys that you can do whatever it is that you want with your HTTP response. Return your form, return your HTML. It is really up to you, but it's not really feasible to return your HTML with it. I'm just showing you guys. Yeah. So now back to the stuff I wanted to explain in this second part. Um, Starting this week, you guys should start creating APIs. So I want to start giving you a little explanation into what the REST API is. We've done it before, we're going to do it again. So basically, REST basically is an acronym for representational state transfer, basically, and it is a web service. I've explained before that a web service is basically transfers resources over HTTP, that is over the web and all of that. That's why it's called a web service, right? Um, Now something about REST APIs basically is that when you think of REST, just think of it the same way your browser works. So if I go to, which website should I go to now? Does it look have a website? I don't know the URL. Okay, so if I go to amazon.com right now, ouch, my internet is a bit slow. Okay, so if I go to amazon.com right now, a lot of things have happened with me just typing in amazon.com. First of all, when I typed in amazon.com, right, my browser, that is the Firefox I'm using right now, it made something called a request. You know, I mentioned this request and responses. It made something called a request to amazon.com. That is the cloud platform where it is being hosted, right? It made a request to it, and then that platform returned a response. He went to look for, okay, this request you are making, is it valid? Do we have a valid response to this particular request? And then he realized that yes, there is a valid response to this request. So it returned this. So all this whatever that I'm seeing right now, it is the response to my request. That is how a browser works basically, and that is the same kind of architecture that a REST API takes, right? You make a request to the API, and then the API returns a resource. So I think I have to this thing showing up. So I said the web itself follows REST. So think of it this way: this is my browser, this is me right here, and then I make a request to this URL over here, right? So this is the URL, and the method is get. We'll come to method soon. But this is the URL that I typed into my browser, or that my browser is trying to make the request to, and then it's returning a response. What is the response? HTML response, just like this. If you inspect this website now, you start seeing the HTML and all of that. So that's what it does, and it is the same way that REST API model works, right? So you make a request and it returns a response, most of the time JSON response. Great. So now, do you guys understand what I've said so far? Hello, any questions so far?
And and
Okay, awesome. Zainab, is there any question from you?
No.
Awesome, great. So now back to explaining the whole REST API stuff. So there are some things that you should understand about REST APIs. First of all, it is not dependent on any particular programming language. What do I mean by that? Now there are some APIs known as native library APIs, right? That can only be used by a specific language. For instance, Java right now. Java has a lot of crazy APIs, pagination APIs, everything. Now, those APIs, you can't use them with a Python project, it will fail. You can't use it with a JavaScript project, it will fail, right? Because it is specifically for Java. But REST APIs are not like that. The REST API basically any language. For instance, I can create an API with Java and then call the API with maybe Ruby, or call the API with maybe JavaScript. And I can create an API with Python and call it with JavaScript or TypeScript, whatever it is that I want to call it with. It does not really care about the language that I'm using, because it is over the web, and the web does not really care about, okay, is this the language or is that the language? It doesn't really bother about that. So that's one of the features. Another features is that it doesn't cache as in CACHE. Let me try to type it here for you guys. So CACHE. No, yeah, cache basically. So it doesn't cache. And what does that, what that means basically is that it doesn't remember previous requests. So for instance, now there's something that happened on our browser. Okay, so this is the first request we made to home. We returned 200. No, don't let us use that. Let me use a more feasible explanation. If you guys use ChatGPT and you ask it a question the first time, for instance, you ask it what is a Django view, and it responds to you, right? And then you say I want to return an HTTP response showing an HTML form. What it's going to do for you is that it's going to create a Django view, despite the fact that in your next question you didn't mention anything about Django view. You just said HTTP response. It will create a Django view for you, returning an HTTP response with whatever you have specified. And the reason for that is that it remembers the previous conversation that you had with it. So REST API is not like that. Once you make a request to an API the first time, right? You say I've made this request before and it returns something called 200. Okay, if I make the request a second time, it still returns, okay, 4 for not found. Okay, we've changed the URL. Sorry, let me say we changed the URL. So if I do this again, it's still going to return a 200 okay for me, right? Despite the fact that it is still the same resource. Normally you'd probably want something like a 304 that says it has not been modified, that it is still the same. So basically, before I go into all of that, basically what I'm trying to say is that it does not store your previous request. So each request that you make is independent of the previous one. So you can see you can see it as like maybe a weakness, but that's basically one of the characteristics that it has basically. And that's how REST APIs work. So I'd like to talk about types of requests that you can make. Types of requests that you can make. So there are four major types of requests, right, that I will discuss right now. And the first one is the post request. Second one is the get. Then we have the put and the delete. So let us use a blog for instance. I know I'm not coding now. I just want to lay the foundation for the next class. So let's use a blog for instance now. On a blog, whenever you type a comment, or for instance this form, now let's say I fill in this form and then I submit. What I'm doing is I'm making a post request. Why is it a post request? A post request basically is that I am adding to it, right? No. Okay. Remember in our last class where we went to the admin panel and then we're adding some posts and doing all sort of things, right? What we're doing at that point in time is that we're making a push request because it is being saved to the database, right? The rest, whatever it is that we put in has been saved to it. So that is the same on a blog. If you go to the comment section and then you type in a comment, it is being saved and then people can see it as, oh, this is a new comment, right? So that's a post request. You are adding, you are creating, yeah, you are creating a new instance. You are creating something, right? So if a Google form now, you fill a Google form and then you submit, it's still a post request. You fill a contact form. Let's say you go to a website and they say, okay, contact us. You fill it. It is a post request. All of that post requests. Then we have a get. A get request is what your browser does basically. Once you go to a website, the first thing your browser basically sends a get request. A get request is basically to get something from a resource. So now, in our application right now, let me go back. In our application right now, we created the home, we created the contents. I think it's contents will be best for this. And then we did this as well, right? So what we are doing right now is that we are trying to retrieve all the information, all the posts, all the content and titles from the database, and in a sense we are trying to get it. So that's what the get request does. So if you want to identify a get request, basically, Shasha, number one, if you go to a website, anything is get request. But if you type something on Google now, let's say hello, you type it on Google, right? You notice something in the URL, it will bring something, you know, something in the, you notice that whatever you type here is what is showing here right now. So that's one of the easiest ways to understand that, okay, this is actually a get request, because Google just is just trying to bring information back to you. So if I come here again and I type another thing, I say bye. If I come here, you see that in this place, I'm seeing my hello plus the buy that I just typed. All of this is just because I'm using Firefox. So I'm just saying hello plus buy. So that's basically one of the ways you can identify a get request. Now, from what I've said so far about post and get, I want to ask a small question. If, for instance, as a developer, you are creating a form to collect user information, right? Maybe you're collecting user name, age, and all of those things. What kind of requests will you use and why? Anybody wants to try?
A post request because they are getting data from the user.
Mm, yeah, we're getting data from the user, but why can't it be a get? It's getting. Why can't it be a get request?
Um, for get request, how will I put this?
Okay. Let me try to explain. Okay, you're actually correct when you said it's a post request. Number one, the fact that you are adding to what you are creating a new instance, because this is a new user filling the form, right? So you are creating, that's um why you need a push request. And number two, because of the security measure. Now, if for instance you can see what I mentioned about when I when it's a get request, you can everything I type in is going to be shown in the URL. So your user is filling in sensitive information, their bank card, they're filling maybe a payment aspect of your application, and they're filling in sensitive information, right? And then they submit, and the next thing they are seeing in the URL, they are seeing all the information. They are seeing their bank card, they are seeing their name, their age, their IDs, and all of that. That is like a really huge security risk, right? So you always want to make sure that you use your push request when you should use it, and you use your get request when you should use it. So you understand, for instance, if it's the search aspect of your website, let's use Amazon now. What should we search for? Let's search for microphone. Okay, great. So now I searched for microphone on Amazon, and if you look at this place, right, you see that microphone is there right now. So since it's just a search, by there's nothing that can potentially put your user at risk, right? You can use a get request for your search, but for sensitive stuff, always try to use your post requests. You get that now? So that's just what I wanted to bring out to you guys. So on if you open
Yes.
Postman, if you open Postman, basically if you click on this place, you see so many different methods. You can even add your own. So far we've been using the get, and that's why we've been doing all of this. in next class we'll start using post and the rest. So just to touch on puts, what is puts? Basically, put is like you're trying to edit something. So if we went to the admin panel now and we decide that we want to change one of these, we want to change the content, the kind of method that we are doing, the kind of request method is known as put, because we are um, editing something, we are modifying something, right? That's why I don't know if you've heard of CRUD, CRUD, create, read, update, delete. So create basically for post request, because post request is to create. Read is basically get request, because you are getting it, the user is getting it to read or to go through and all of that. Update, that's CRU, U is update. Update is basically a put request, because the user is maybe editing it, modifying it. You can use whatever adjective you want to use for it. It simply updates. Then delete. Delete is just to delete it. So those are the four major requests. You see most people when they want to start teaching beginners, they'll start with crude, create a crude application, create a crude application, and you guys will still create that one by God's grace before this program ends. So yeah, those are the four major methods that I wanted to mention. And now if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and ask your questions before I stop the recording. Any questions?
I don't have any question.
Awesome. Joseph, what about you?
No questions, Iva.
Okay, so you're saying you get everything correctly, all the explanation.
No, obviously no, but like I was able to catch some, and I'll check catch up by watching the recording.
Okay, awesome. So I'm not showing the recording now, and you guys can go ahead and complete the stuff we're doing the other time.